iHeart Podcasts. Hear more Gold 101.7 podcasts,
playlists, and listen live on the free iHeart app.
Jonesy and Amanda.
Jam Nation. Well, we saw some confronting scenes this week after tens of thousands of people took to the streets in almost every capital city for the March for Australia, calling for an end to mass immigration. Independent Senator David Pocock says growing frustration stems from a lack of clarity from the government, with no one really offering a plan on how to deal with what we perceive to be rising immigration. David Pocock, hello.
Morning, Jonesy and Amanda.
How are you?
Well, actually, I'm saying rising immigration. Is immigration on the rise, or is the perception of it that?
If you look at the numbers after the catch-up after COVID, it really is about perception. And, what we saw on the weekend was just so tragic and deeply concerning to see neo-Nazis marching in our streets and to have sort of racism dressed up as concern about immigration. I think we have to absolutely call that out. And at the same time, we have to be able to have hard conversations. I've been trying to get the Senate and the Parliament to actually have a discussion about immigration and population and talk about how big do we want Australia to be? How do we balance the skills that we need with ensuring that we have enough housing and infrastructure? How do we reduce impacts on the environment as cities grow? Like, these are conversations that aren't happening, and we don't actually have an overall plan. And my concern is that when you don't have a plan, it's very easy for people to scapegoat migrants who clearly aren't causing our housing woes. That is far deeper than that.
And Dick Smith has been saying for a long time, the overpopulation, we can't support that. But then on the other hand, you hear people saying populate or perish. Which one's it supposed to be?
Well, exactly. And I think these are the kind of conversations that leaders should be having, actually hearing those views, making the case to the Australian people. This is just how valuable immigration has been. As a migrant myself, I've loved the opportunity here. I feel like I've contributed a lot, but clearly the marches on the weekend weren't targeted at white migrants like me. There were so many racist overtones to it, and I think we have to call that out, and at the same time say, okay, well, let's talk about these things. Yes, there are impacts on the environment. The State of the Environment report, the government's own report, has said that rising populations, growing cities are having a huge impact on the environment. You can't get away from that fact. So let's take that into account and actually have this conversation, and then have a plan. So when people raise this, you can say, well, actually, we've been through all of this, and here is our plan.
You've also said that it's a false narrative that immigration is causing our housing crisis. There are things the government can do about the housing crisis, and they're not about immigration.
Yeah, we've got a country where the major parties seem they're allergic to talking about some of the root causes of a housing system where we treat it as an investment vehicle rather than as more of a human right, something we want to be accessible and affordable. And you just have to go down to any auction on the weekend anywhere in Australia and see first home buyers being outbid by property investors, because those property investors can negatively gear. They get a chunky capital gains tax discount if they hold it for more than 12 months. And we've tipped the scales in favor of investors. And I think it's time to change that. And the vast majority of people I speak to want to see sensible changes, like capping your ability to negatively gear investment properties just down to one. 70% of Australians only have one investment property, but we have a small percentage of Australians who own a huge chunk of our real estate and are doing very well from it.
I read a book called Doppelganger, which was written in light of the COVID crisis and the aftermath. And this is where this journalist, Naomi Wolf is her name, said that Naomi Klein, and she spoke about how she gets confused with Naomi Wolf. And that's what started the doppelganger thing. But where America split as to vax, anti-vax, government, anti-government, it's split because no one tackled what were real concerns in the middle. And that's where that we have that vacuum. That's where these fringe groups arise. And I think that what you're saying is that's what will we're in danger of seeing here if we don't tackle the real issues at the base of these fears.
I think you're spot on there, and I mean I've got a lot of time for Naomi Klein's work and analysis, and I think if you look at the US, some very genuine concerns of middle America, of even sort of people who are struggling, the battlers in America weren't taken into account, and I'm concerned that here in Australia we can't think that we're immune to that. We have to be able to have these hard conversations, and over the last few days, talking about this, my office, we've had angry calls from Nazis and racists. And we've also had angry calls from people who say to even talk about immigration means that I'm a racist. And so I think we need more people willing to actually say, let's have a sensible conversation here. My experience so far in the parliament has been that people aren't up for that, but that it's so crucial if we're actually going to avoid some of the what we've seen in the US.
Yeah. Well, David, thank you again for joining us. Look after yourself, mate. Have a good time in Canberra.
Thanks very much. Cheers. Good to chat.
Nice to talk to you.
David
Thank you.
Pocock there.